Hi everyone and welcome to another Korean lesson from Korean Studio. My name is Kim Gi-hwan. Today we're going to learn how to form Korean sentences. So by the end of this video, you should have a strong knowledge of how to form basic Korean sentences. Okay, so let's begin with the basics. Now the basic word order of Korean sentences is subject plus object plus verb. And this differs from English, as English sentences follow subject plus verb plus object pattern. So in English, we would say, I like football. So we have the subject I, the verb like, and the object football. However, in Korean, to say the same sentence, we would say, 저는 축구를 좋아해요. 저는 축구를 좋아해요. So we have the subject 저, the object of the verb 축구, and the verb 좋아해요. And this is the basic word order of Korean sentences. Now, one of the most distinctive features of Korean language is that we mark sentence subjects using either topic or subject marking particles. Topic particles are 은 and 는, and subject particles are 이 and 가. And we use one or the other depending on whether the noun they're used with end in 받침 or not. In this sentence, we've used the topic particle 는, so 저, I becomes the sentence topic. But the same sentence could be written using subject particles. And if we do that, it would be 제가 축구를 좋아해요. 제가 축구를 좋아해요. And as you can see, when we use the subject particle with the pronoun 저 changes to 제. Now, we've already made a video on how and why we use these particles. So to get a comprehensive understanding of how we use these particles, please do check that video out. The link will be in the description. Now, topic and subject particles have very specific uses, such as helping the listener focus on different parts of the sentence, as well as showing a contrast between different ideas between different sentences. So there are times when it's absolutely necessary to use these particles. However, there are also times when these particles play no specific role in the sentence, other than to mark a word as a sentence subject or a sentence topic. So if it's not necessary to use the topic or subject particles, they are often dropped from the sentence. So we could just say, 저 축구를 좋아해요. 저 축구를 좋아해요. So as you can see, the pronoun 저 is used on its own. However, as well as marking sentence subjects, we also use something called object marking particles, 을 and 를. And as you can imagine, we use these particles to mark the object of the verb, which in this sentence is 축구, football. And we use 를 with nouns that don't end in 받침, such as 축구. But if a noun does end in 받침, such as 집, meaning house, which ends in 비읍 받침, we would use 을 and say 집을. Now, object marking particles help to mark a noun as the object of the verb and can also be used for emphasis, but they generally do not play a significant role in a sentence. So omitting object particles in Korean sentences is very common. So if we omit the object particle, we would have 저 축구 좋아해요. 저 축구 좋아해요. And a sentence like this is very common. So those are the basics of Korean sentences. The basic word order is subject, object, verb, and we use certain particles to mark a word as a sentence subject or a topic, and also to mark the object of the verb. But if these particles play no significant role in the sentence, they are often omitted. Okay, so let's now move on and look at how we add additional elements to a basic Korean sentence. Let's first take a look at an example sentence. I ate lunch. 저는 점심을 먹었어요. I ate lunch. 저는 점심을 먹었어요. So again, the word order of Korean sentence is subject plus object plus verb. And we have the topic particle 는 marking the sentence topic and the object particle 을 marking the object of the verb. Let's now expand the sentence and say, I ate lunch at home. 저는 집에서 점심을 먹었어요. I ate lunch at home. 저는 집에서 점심을 먹었어요. In this sentence, 집에서 means at home. And generally, this is the most common position for what's called a prepositional phrase, 집에서, at home. It usually comes after the sentence subject or the topic and before the object of the verb. However, this is not a fixed position, and this sentence can be written like this. 저는 점심을 집에서 먹었어요. So as you can see, we can change the position of the object of the verb 점심을, lunch, and 집에서, at home. Let's now expand this sentence even further and say, I ate lunch at home with 민수. 저는 집에서 민수랑 점심을 먹었어요. I ate lunch at home with 민수. 저는 집에서 민수랑 점심을 먹었어요. So now we have two additional elements, 집에서, at home, and 민수랑, with 민수. And once you start to have multiple elements like this, they can change position to focus on different parts of the sentence. So this same sentence could be written as 저는 민수랑 점심을 집에서 먹었어요. 저는 점심을 집에서 민수랑 먹었어요. 저는 집에서 점심을 민수랑 먹었어요. Now, generally speaking, when you start to have multiple elements in a sentence, there is greater focus on the element that is closest to the verb. So in the first sentence, there is greater focus on 점심을. In the second sentence, 집에서. In the third sentence, 민수랑, and so on. However, this is not an absolute rule and can depend on the context the sentence is used in. Additionally, although the subject or the topic of the sentence should come at the front of the sentence, in speech, this rule is not always followed. So someone might say, 점심을 저는 집에서 민수랑 먹었어요. So in speech, people might form sentences like this, with the sentence topic not at the front of the sentence. However, it's important to note that this sort of sentence is generally only formed in speech and not in writing. Okay, so the second key point to note is that when a sentence has multiple elements, these elements can change their position in a sentence. But the key point to note is that one word that has a fixed position is the verb, which is the end of the sentence. Let's now consider the importance of context when forming Korean sentences. Now, one of the most common questions we ask in Korean is, have you eaten or did you eat? And we kind of ask this as a form of greeting when we meet people close to a mealtime. And this question is, 밥 먹었어? 밥 먹었어? 밥 generally means cooked rice, but we also often use it to refer to a meal. And then we have the past form of 먹다, to eat, 먹었어. So 먹었어 means ate. Now, one of the most unique things about Korean language is that when we form yes or no questions, we simply raise the tone at the end of the declarative statement. So if we say 밥 먹었어, 밥 먹었어, it means I ate. But if we say 밥 먹었어, 밥 먹었어, it means did you eat? Now, when we ask this question to the person I'm talking to, there is no pronoun you. And this is because based on the context, as in the situation, it's obvious that I'm asking the person I'm talking to. So I don't need to use the pronoun 너, which means you. Now, of course, we can use the pronoun 너 and ask, 너 밥 먹었어? And that will be fine as well. But as the meaning of you is obvious based on the context, the pronoun is often omitted in this type of situation. Now, to answer this question, we can simply say yes, or 아니, no, or yes, and so on. But for the sake of this lesson, let's imagine that you want to say, I ate a meal, or I ate something, I had lunch, or whatever. Now, in this situation, the question was clearly asked to me. So we know the response will also be about me. I'm not going to be talking about other people having eaten a meal. I'm going to say, I ate a meal. So we don't necessarily need to use the pronoun I. So we don't have to say, 나는 밥 먹었어. We can simply say, 밥 먹었어. 밥 먹었어. And the meaning of I is understood based on the context. However, and this is where it gets really interesting. In this situation, my response is clearly about whether I had a meal or not. So in essence, we don't need to use the word 밥. I'm not going to be talking about whether I ate dinner or whether I ate a snack or whatever. I'm talking about a meal because that's what the question was about. So the listener knows that my answer is about 밥. So we can simply say 먹었어. 먹었어. And this would be sufficient in answering that question. 밥 먹었어? So whether we omit certain parts of a sentence is largely dependent on the context. And omitting parts of a sentence is more common in speech than in writing. Okay, so the 3 key points from today's lesson was 1, the basic word order of Korean sentences, which is subject, object plus verb, and how we use particles to mark different parts of the sentence, such as the sentence subject, topic, and the object. And we also looked at how a Korean sentence can have multiple elements and that these elements can change positions depending on what you want to focus on. And we also looked at how, depending on the context, certain parts of the sentence can be omitted, but the meaning of these parts can be conveyed based on the context. Okay, so that's it for today's lesson, and I look forward to seeing you soon again. Bye-bye.